Opening and the world you enter, you close your eyes, and the hum of the modern world fades away. No engines. No street lights. No warm hum of electricity filling the air. Instead, you hear the low, hollow toll of a church bell, deep and slow, rolling across open fields and winding through narrow dirt lanes. It is the Middle Ages. And you are poor. The air smells of damp earth and wood smoke. A chill clings to it, settling into your skin before you've even left the bed of straw you share with the rest of your family. That bed, if you could call it that, is no more than a lumpy mattress stuffed with hay, covered in coarse linen. It itches. It smells faintly of mildew and, sometimes, of the sheep from whose wool the blanket was spun. You pull it closer to your chin, but it is thin, and you feel the air biting at your toes. The first light of dawn seeps in through the gaps in the wattle and daubed walls, tracing faint silver lines across the darkness. You hear movement of your neighbor's rooster crowing from across the lane, the creak of wooden shutters being opened, the muffled cough of someone starting the morning fire. Life here begins early, and without it, you don't eat. Your home is small. One room. A single space where everything happens: sleeping, eating, mending clothes, tending to the fire, and sometimes bringing new life into the world. Smoke hangs in the air because there is no chimney. It curls upward, blackening the beams overhead before finding its way out through a small hole in the roof. You're used to it, but it still stings your eyes and leaves your hair smelling like last night's fire. You lie there a moment longer, letting the sounds of the village surround you. Chickens clucking. A cart rolling over frozen earth. Somewhere in the distance, the rhythmic thunk of an axe splitting wood. These are the sounds of survival. You will need all your strength for the day ahead. There is no question of whether you want to get up. The world does not care if you are tired or sore, if your feet itch from yesterday's work, if you would rather stay wrapped in the little warmth you have. The animals need feeding. The field needs tending. The bread must be baked. Life here is not a choice, it is a duty. You swing your legs over the side of the straw bed, your bare feet touching the packed dirt floor. It is cold and hard underfoot, sprinkled with bits of straw and last night's ashes from the hearth. In one corner, a clay jug of water waits for you to wash your face. It is icy. You cup it in your hands and splash it over your skin, feeling the shock wake you more fully. The clothes you wear are simply rough woolen tunic, dyed a muted brown with plant roots and bark, and patched so many times you can barely tell the original fabric from the repairs. Over it, you tie a worn leather belt, its surface cracked with age. Your feet slip into wooden clogs, flimsy, but better than going barefoot on the frozen ground. Outside, the village stirs. Thatched roofs rise like small hills in the mist, each one sheltering a family just like yours. Beyond them lie the open fields, stretching toward the tree line, bare now in winter, their soil resting until the next planting season. But even in winter, there is no true rest here. You step into the lane, breath puffing white in the air. A neighbor nods as she passes, her arms already full of firewood. She has a baby strapped to her back with a strip of linen, and her face is set in the same tired determination you feel in your own bones. You both keep walking. There is no time for long greetings. Life for the poor in the Middle Ages is not simply hard, it is unrelenting. It shapes you from the moment you are born, pressing into you like the wind that never stops, like the hunger that never quite fades. You do not think of it as unfair. You think of it as life. You have never known anything else. And yet there are small mercies. The warmth of a shared loaf. The laughter that bubbles up around the hearth when someone tells a familiar tale. The quiet beauty of dawn settling over the fields, painting the frost in silver. Moments so small they might be invisible to someone from another time. But to you, they are everything. You walk toward the edge of the village, where the fields begin. Ground is uneven, scattered with stones and muddy patches. The smell of the earth mixes with the faint tang of wood smoke drifting from the houses behind you. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks, and a flock of birds lifts from the hedgerow, their wings catching the pale morning light. The day will be long. Your hands will ache. Your back will bend. Your stomach will remind you, again and again, that you have not eaten enough. But you will endure. Not because you are unbreakable, but because breaking is not an option. You take one last look at the village behind you. Homes huddle together as if bracing against the cold, the thin threads of smoke rising from their roofs into the gray sky. Inside each one, another life is beginning its day of labor, of quiet struggle, of survival. And now, so does yours. The cramped home you call shelter, the place you call home, is not built for comfort. It is built for survival, quick to put up, easy to patch, and just warm enough to keep the frost from taking you while you sleep. The walls are wattle and daub woven wooden strips packed with mud, straw, and manure, the scent faint but always there. In summer, the mud bakes and cracks, letting in dust and insects. In winter, it chills, drawing the damp into the air and into your bones. You can see daylight through some of the gaps, and when the wind blows, it finds every one of them. There is only one room. The floor is packed earth, darkened by years of smoke, spilled broth, and muddy boots. It holds the weight of everything you own: a row table, 3-legged stools, a chest for the few pieces of clothing your family has, and the straw bed you share. Privacy is a word that doesn't exist here. Every moment of your life, every cough, every sigh, every argument is heard by everyone inside. The roof above is thatched, thick bundles of straw laid over timber beams. In the rainy season, it drips in places, so you've learned where to put the buckets before you sleep. At night, you hear mice scratching in the thatch, the soft shuffle of their small bodies moving overhead. Sometimes, a bird will try to nest there. You let them. They bring small life into the home, and in the quiet moments, the sound of their chicks chirping is almost comforting. The hearth is the heart of the room. It is where you cook, where you warm your hands, where you sit in the evening to mend clothes by the glow of the fire. But there is no chimney to carry away the smoke. It curls and lingers, filling the air, stinging your eyes until they water. Beams above are black with years of soot. Your hair and clothes carry the scent no matter how often you wash. In one corner, a few tools lean against the wall: your husband's wooden rake, a hoe, a broken-handled spade. They are more precious than gold here. Without them, you cannot work the land, and without the land, you cannot live. The bed is not truly a bed, just a wooden frame piled with straw, covered in a sheet of coarse linen. It is scratchy against your skin, and the straw shifts beneath you as you move, leaving bare spots that poke and jab. At night, the whole family sleeps here, huddled together for warmth. It is the only way to keep the chill from seeping into your bones. You've learned to sleep through the sound of coughing, shifting bodies, and the occasional whimper from a child caught in a dream. Your clothing hangs from pegs by the door. There is no wardrobe, no cupboard, only these pegs, smoothed by years of hands lifting and hanging the same garments over and over. A tunic patched so many times it is more patched than original cloth. A wool cloak, thick but coarse, its edges frayed. Shoes, if you are lucky, though they are often little more than scraps of leather tied together with cord. By the door, a small shelf holds your cooking pots, blackened iron, dented from years of use. They are heavy, awkward to lift, but they will last longer than you will. Beside them, a clay jug for water, a few wooden bowls, and a knife worn thin from sharpening. When the wind howls at night, the walls shudder, and the thatch rustles like dry grass. You hear the village dogs bark, and sometimes, the distant rumble of a cart on the road. Mostly, it is quiet. This home, small as it is everything. It is the place you return to after long days in the field, the place you protect fiercely, the one bit of space in the world that is your seven if it can barely keep out the cold. You know every creak of its timbers, every draft that slips under the door, every darkened corner where a child might hide. It is not much, but it is enough to keep you alive. And here, that is all you can ask for. The meager food that sustains you. The first thing you notice when you step toward the hearth in the morning is how little there is left. A few crusts of dark bread, a handful of onions with their papery skins curling away, and a small sack of barley, its drawstring frayed from use. These are not luxuries. These are what stand between you and hunger. Bread is the heart of your diet, dense, heavy, and dark as the soil it came from. It is made from rye, or barley, or whatever grain you could manage after the Lord took his share. Wheat is a rich man's bread, pale and soft, the kind you've only seen at a feast when the manor opens its doors for a holy day. Your bread is coarse, with flecks of husk in every bite. If it's fresh, it's hard. If it's a few days old, it's harder. You slice it thin, partly to make it last, partly because your teeth itch when you chew too long. In the pot above the fire, you stir the thin porridge that will serve as breakfast. Barley boiled in water, perhaps with a pinch of salt if you have it. Some mornings you add cabbage leaves or a shred of carrot to give it substance. If you're lucky, there might be a scrap of bacon rind left over from the winter slaughter to lend its flavor to the pot. More often, the flavor is smoke, and the warmth is the only comfort. You remember the taste of meat. It comes rarely, perhaps at Easter, or after the autumn slaughter when a pig is shared among several families. The best cuts go to the Lord, of course, and the priest takes his due. What remains for you is boiled down into stew, bone and gristle, salted heavily so it will last. You stretch it for days, each time adding more water, more root vegetables, until the meat is only a memory in the broth. Vegetables are your mainstay. Cabbage, onions, leeks, turnips. They are humble, hardy things, grown in your garden or traded with a neighbor. They store well in winter, though by late spring, the roots are soft, sprouting pale shoots, and the outer leaves are tough. You cut away the worst parts and eat the rest. Waste is a sin here, not only in the eyes of the church, but in the hard math of survival. Fresh fruit is rare, a gift of summer. Apples are gathered in the autumn and stored in a cool corner, wrapped in straw. By winter's end, they are small, wrinkled, and sour. But they are sweet enough to a tongue starved of sugar. Honey is precious, kept for illness, not for pleasure. You've heard of cane sugar from far-off lands, but you've never seen it, and you likely never will. Water from the well is clear enough, but not always safe. You drink it when you must, but when there is time, you make weak all from barley. It is cloudy, flat, and only faintly bitter, but it keeps better than water and warms you in winter. Children drink it too. Its strength is mild, and it is safer than the stagnant pools that form after rain. Hunger is a constant companion. Even after a meal, it lingers a hollow behind the ribs, a quiet itch in the belly. In the hardest months, when the grain from last harvest runs low and the next planting has yet to grow, it sharpens. You find yourself dreaming of bread, of rich broth, of a feast you've never had. At night, when the fire burns low and the day's work is done, you sometimes imagine what the rich eat. You've heard tales from travelers: roasted swan, venison with spices, loaves of white bread as soft as clouds. But those flavors belong to another world. In yours, a good meal is hot, filling, and enough to last until the next. You take the ladle and serve the porridge into wooden bowls, the steam curling up in thin, ghostly ribbons. Each bowl is nearly the same, though the children get a little more. You eat last, scraping the bottom of the pot for what's left. The taste is simple: barley, smoke, a hint of onion from yesterday's stew, but the warmth spreads from your mouth to your stomach, and for a moment, the ache eases. This food will not make you strong. It will keep you alive. Here, in the shadow of the Middle Ages, that is all it needs to do. The relentless work from dawn to dusk. The day begins before the sun rises. In winter, that means working in darkness, guided only by the pale glow of the hearth and the faint blue wash of dawn creeping over the horizon. You do not wait for warmth. The cold is a constant you've learned to carry with you. The moment your feet touch the frozen ground, your body remembers the rhythm of the work. If you live in a rural village, the first task is always with the animals. Even the poorest families might keep a few chickens or a skinny goat, and they depend on you as much as you depend on them. You scatter feed for the hens, your breath rising in soft white clouds as they cluck and peck at the dirt. Their eggs, when they come, are treasures, fragile shells holding precious food. If you are lucky enough to have a cow, you milk her in the quiet of the morning, the sound of the milk hitting the wooden bucket steady and soft. The milk will be thin in winter, richer in summer, and always more precious than gold in your kitchen. From there, the work shifts to the fields, or in colder months, to mending, spinning, or repairing tools. In spring and summer, planting is urgent. You work bent over for hours, pressing seeds into the earth, covering them with soil, your hands numb from the damp. In autumn, harvest is a race against the weather. Grain must be cut, threshed, and stored before the rains come, and every able-bodied man, woman, and child joins the effort. The tools are simple: wooden plows pulled by oxen, sickles and scythes for cutting, rakes for gathering hay. They are heavy, and they bite into your hands, leaving blisters that harden into calluses. There are no gloves to spare here, and no time to rest if your back itches. For women, the work is doubled. Fields demand you, but so does the home. Bread must be baked, clothes mended, and children tended even as your body bends over the soil. The fire must be kept alive. If it goes out, you may have to walk to a neighbor's house to borrow a glowing coal, a task that steals precious time from other duties. In the summer heat, the air shimmers above the fields, sweat rolling down your face into your eyes. In the winter, the ground is iron, your breath freezing on your scar. There is no season of rest, only different kinds of labor. When the lord of the manor calls for 4 days of unpaid work on his land, you go without question. It is not a choice. His fields, his ditches, his roads must be tended, and the time you spend there is time stolen from your own land. But refusing means punishment, and punishment in these times can be brutal. Work does not pause for weather, or sickness, or grief. If a storm rolls in, you keep working until the rain turns the ground to mud beneath your feet. If you are ill, you move slower, but you move. If someone dies, you grieve with your hands in the soil, because the earth waits for no one. By midday, your body feels the weight of the hours already pass. Your back itches, your hands are stiff, and the sun when it shines has burned your face to a deep, weathered brown. Take a short break, perhaps eating a crust of bread and a slice of onion, washed down with a gulp of ale. Then you rise, because there is more to do. The work continues until the sun sinks low, and the shadows stretch long across the fields. You gather tools, herd the animals back toward their pens, and walk home with the weariness of the day hanging on your shoulders. The dirt clings to your clothes, and the smell of soil and sweat lingers in your hair. This is not the kind of work that ends. It simply pauses for the night, only to begin again with the next dawn. In the Middle Ages, for the poor, labor is not just part of life. It is life. The crushing weight of taxes and duties, even after the back-breaking work of the fields, the food you grow, and the goods you make are not truly yours. In the Middle Ages, a poor person's life is lived under a constant shadow of the obligations you owe to others. And those obligations are many. First comes the tithe. The church demands 1/10 of what you produce, whether it's grain, eggs, or livestock. It does not matter if the harvest was poor, or if your family has been going hungry. The priest's barn must be filled, and the parish chest must be heavy with coin. Refusing is unthinkable. Not only is it a crime in the eyes of the law, it is a sin in the eyes of God. Then there is the rent owed to your Lord. You do not own the land you work, you only hold it at his will. In return, you must give him a portion of your harvest or labor on his domestic, his personal fields without pay. This core of labor can consume days or even weeks of your year, time stolen from tending your own crops. If you cannot meet your obligations, the punishment might be fines you cannot afford, loss of your land, or worse. Beyond that, there are the small but relentless fees and dues. Payment to grind your grain at the Lord's mill. Payment to bake bread in his oven. Payment to use his bridge or cross his road. Even your animals are not exempt. If you keep a pig, you may owe a fee to let it forage in the Lord's woodland, a pannage tax that takes yet more from your already thin resources. In times of war, new taxes appear. Soldiers must be equipped, fortifications repaired, and the cost often falls hardest on those with the least to give. You may be asked for an extra levy of grain, or forced to house soldiers in your already cramped home, feeding them with food meant for your children. And when disaster strikes, a poor harvest, a flood, a sickness that wipes out livestock, the obligations remain unchanged. The church still expects its tithe, the Lord still expects his rent, and the miller still expects his fee. You cannot explain hunger to a system that does not care whether you live or die. There is no relief from these demands. The calendar of the year is marked not only by the seasons and holy days, but by the times when taxes are due. At harvest, when the fields are full, you know the first sheaves will be carted away for others. Lent, you remember the tithe collector will come knocking. In autumn, you ready the payment for the mill and the baker. For the poor, these duties are more than numbers and ruleless. They are a weight that bends your back lower than the plow ever could. You learn to live with less because so much of what you make is taken before you ever see it on your own table. And yet, there is no open rebellion, no refusal. Survival in the Middle Ages depends on accepting the hierarchy, even as it grinds you down. The Lord protects you from raiders. The church promises salvation. And so you pay, year after year, because there is no other way. Illness, injury, and the lack of healing sickness is never far from your door. In the crowded, smoky air of your home, where people and animals share the same space, coughs and fevers spread like fire in dry straw. You have no understanding of germs, no one does, but you know that when one person falls ill, others soon follow. A simple cut on your hand from a sickle can fester. Without soap, without clean water, without the faintest idea of how infection works, a wound can swell, turn hot, and claim your life in a matter of days. Even the smallest injury, a blister torn open, a splinter that lodges deep, can be a death sentence if it worsens. Winter brings coughs that rattle deep in the chest, and in the damp, cold months, aching joints and fevers become constant companions. In the warm months, flies swarm over open sores, and stomach sickness can sweep through the village after heavy rain fouls the water. When illness comes, you turn to the remedies you know. A poultice of herbs for swelling, honey for a sore throat, strong ale to numb pain. Sometimes the remedies help, sometimes they do nothing, and sometimes they make things worse. The village-wise woman might have knowledge of plants that soothe the fevers or slow bleeding, but her skill is not enough to fight the worst sicknesses. For serious ailments, you might seek the priest, who will bless you, anoint you with holy oil, and pray for your soul. But prayers do not always heal the body. If you live near a monastery, the monks might offer a draught of herbal medicine or a place to rest, but they cannot cure the pox, the plague, or the wasting fevers. Childbirth is perhaps the most dangerous trial of all. For a medieval woman, giving life often risks taking her own. Complications are common: babies too large, breech births, heavy bleeding, and there is no surgeon skilled enough to save both mother and child in such cases. Many women die young, their graves marked by nothing more than a wooden cross. Outbreaks of great sickness, pestilence, can sweep through without warning. You may have heard stories of the Black Death, how entire villages were emptied, the air filled with the sound of church bells tolling for the dead. In those years, survival often came down to luck more than strength. For the poor, illness is not just a personal burden, it is an economic one. If you are too sick to work, the fields go untended, the animals unfed, and the rent unpaid. Your neighbors may help for a time, but they have their own mouths to feed. So, you learn to work through pain. You bind a cut, and keep hoeing. You cradle a child with a fever and still stir the pot over the fire. You keep moving because there is no rest, and because stopping might mean you never start again. Here, in the Middle Ages, sickness is not a momentary setback, it is a shadow that follows you all your life, whispering that one day, it will overtake you. The harshness of weather, and the seasons in the Middle Ages, the weather is not just a backdrop to life, it is an active, unpredictable force that can make or break survival. For the poor, every season brings its own trials, each one shaping the rhythm of your work, your meals, and even your health. Winter is a season of endurance. The cold seeps into the walls of your wattle and daub hut, the wind slipping through cracks no matter how much straw you stuff into them. The single hearth in the center of your home fights a losing battle against the freezing air, its smoke curling upward to escape through the thatch. The breath is visible indoors. Water freezes in buckets. Bread becomes rock hard overnight, and you must warm it near the fire before you can chew it. The fields lie dormant, so your days are spent mending tools, repairing fences, and tending to animals cramped into small enclosures. Illness spreads easily in the close quarters, and the shortage of fresh food weakens everyone. Spring should mean relief, but instead it brings back-breaking work and uncertainty. The thaw turns roads into mud and floods low-lying fields. Seeds must be sown quickly before the rains ruin the soil. Too much water rots crops, too little stunts them before they sprout. You work with the knowledge that one bad planting season can mean hunger for an entire year. Summer is relentless in its own way. The sun beats down without mercy, and hours stretch long as you toil in the fields from dawn until dusk. Sweat stings your eyes, your skin darkens and cracks under the glare. The heat spoils food quickly, making preservation a constant challenge. There is little time to rest, the weeds grow fast, and the crops need care daily. Autumn is the season of urgency. The harvest must be brought in before the rains begin, and every able body is pressed into service. You cut, gather, thresh, and store with a speed that leaves your muscles itching. The success or failure of these weeks determines whether your family eats well, eats poorly, or starves during the winter ahead. There is satisfaction in seeing the barn fill, but also anxiety: will it last until next harvest? Weather does not care for your plans. A storm at the wrong time can flatten grain. A late frost can kill seedlings. Drought can leave entire fields dry and barren. Flooding can wash away not only crops but homes. There are no weather forecasts, only the sky, the wind, and the instincts passed down from your elders. When nature turns truly cruel, hail shredding crops, a summer of ceaseless rain, or a winter that bites too long, it can lead to famine. You cannot simply buy food from far away. There are no swift wagons loaded with fresh grain for the poor. You eat what you can grow, trade, or beg. In the medieval world, the seasons are not gentle cycles. They are 4 distinct battlegrounds, each demanding strength, patience, and luck. To survive them all year after year is an unspoken victory few truly appreciate until the weather decides otherwise. Harshness of weather and the seasons rule your life more than any lord or priest. They decide when you plant, when you harvest, and how well you eat or whether you eat at all. In the Middle Ages, the weather is not just background, it is a force that shapes every moment of your year. Spring is a race. The ground must be broken before the soil hardens under summer sun. Too much rain and the fields become mud, sucking at your feet, drowning seeds before they sprout. Too little rain, and the earth turns to dust, the shoots wither, and the promise of the harvest fades before it even begins. Summer brings long, sweltering days that press down like a heavy hand. The heat bakes the soil until it cracks, and working the fields under a burning sun leaves your skin darkened and your lips dry. You drink all not for pleasure but because water can make you sick. Flies and gnats swarm in clouds, crawling into your eyes and mouth, and every scratch on your skin risks infection. Autumn is the season of urgency. Crops must be gathered before the rains set in. A single early storm can rot grain in the fields, and there are no second chances. You work until your back screams, bending and lifting, stacking sheaves in neat lines under the open sky. The sun sets earlier each night, and the chill creeps into your bones. Every sack you fill is a measure of how well or how poorly you will survive the coming winter. Winter is the hardest of all. Days are short, the nights long, and the cold merciless. Frost creeps into the corners of your home. The hearth must be fed constantly, but wood is scarce and expensive. You wear the same patched wool garments day after day, layers stiff with dirt, and the smell of smoke. The ground outside is frozen, and nothing grows. If your stores run low before spring, hunger sharpens. You may boil nettles or chew strips of leather to quiet the emptiness in your belly. Meat is rare unless you slaughter an animal, and the choice risks leaving you without milk, eggs, or future offspring. Storms in any season can destroy months of work. A flood can carry away seed and soil alike, leaving behind only stones. A hard frost in spring can kill young plants overnight. A hailstorm can shred an entire field of grain in minutes. There is no insurance, no compensation, only loss. The weather is indifferent to your labor. You may rise before dawn, bend your back to the plow, and pray for a good harvest, yet the sky answers in its own time and its own way. And in the Middle Ages, a bad season does not mean a slimmer profit, it means hunger, sickness, and sometimes death. The poor, the turning of the year is not a gentle cycle of change, it is a test, and you must pass it every year just to see the next. Hunger and the lean months. Hunger is not a stranger in the Middle Ages, it is a yearly visitor you learn to expect. No matter how hard you work, no matter how carefully you store your harvest, there will come a time when the food runs low, and your body feels the hollow itch of want. The most dangerous period is the lean months, the stretch between the last of winter's stores and the first crops of spring. By February or March, the grain bins are half empty. The smoked meat is gone, or what's left is thick with salt and so tough it must be boiled for hours before it can be chewed. The apples in the loft are shrunken and soft, their sweetness long faded. Meals grow smaller. A thick loaf of bread becomes thin slices. You add more water to the pottage, turning it from a hearty stew into something closer to soup. On lucky days, you might flavor it with a handful of wild greens or a scrap of bacon fat. On unlucky days, it is just boiled barley or peas, seasoned only with hunger. Children cry at night, their small bellies rumbling. You hush them with stories, with promises of the warm days to come, but you cannot give them what you do not have. Your own stomach clenches, but you give your portion to them, hoping your strength will last until the fields yield again. Hunger dulls the mind. It makes you slow, your hands heavy, your thoughts wandering like smoke. Work becomes harder, your muscles tire quickly, and even simple tasks feel as though you're moving through thick water. In this state, injury is more likely, and recovery slower. Sometimes desperation drives people to theft. A chicken disappears from a neighbor's yard. A sack of grain vanishes from the mill. But punishment for stealing food can be severe public whipping, mutilation, or even death. Most people endure the hunger rather than risk the news. In the worst years, when crops fail across the region, famine spreads. Prices rise beyond reach, and those with coin hoard it. People gather whatever they can, roots, nettles, even tree bark to fill their stomachs. The air in the village grows quieter in these times, as the weak slip away and the strong conserve their breath. And yet, when the first shoots of spring push through the soil, there is hope again. Fresh greens appear in the hedgerows, the hens begin laying more eggs, and the fields promise a harvest. Hunger loosens its grip but never releases you entirely. Because in the Middle Ages, you know it will return, as it always does, in the turning of the year. Clothing, shelter, and the struggle to stay warm. Your clothing is not a matter of style, it is a matter of survival. For the poor in the Middle Ages, garments are few, patched, and worn until they nearly fall apart. Most are made of coarse wool or linen, spun and woven locally. Wool keeps out some of the cold but scratches against your skin. Linen is lighter, good for summer, but offers no warmth when the wind cuts through. You likely own only one full set of clothes, perhaps two if you are lucky. Each layer is mended again and again, the stitches uneven but holding. Bright colors are rare. Cloth costs more, so most clothing is in the muted tones of the sheep it came from, browns, grays, and off-whites. If you own a hood or cloak, it is your greatest defense against the rain and cold, and you guard it carefully. Shoes are a luxury. Many poor people go barefoot in summer, saving their worn leather shoes for winter or travel. The soles are thin and patched, and every step over stony ground sends pain through your feet. In cold months, you might wrap your legs in strips of cloth or stuff straw inside your shoes for insulation. Your home is as simple as your clothing. A small wattle and daub hut with a thatched roof, perhaps one room, sometimes two. The floor is packed earth. In winter, it is damp and cold underfoot, and in summer, dust rises with every step. The walls are not sealed tightly, wind whistles through the gaps, and in heavy rain, water seeps in. The hearth is the heart of the home. It provides heat, light, and a place to cook. But it is smoky, and without a chimney, the air is thick and stings the eyes. You huddle close to the fire in winter, turning slowly to warm every side of your body. Wood must be gathered daily, and if you are caught taking it from the Lord's forest without permission, the penalty can be severe. In the depths of winter, warmth becomes the main measure of comfort. You may sleep with your entire family in one bed, the bodies pressed together under every scrap of cloth or fur you own. The animals might be brought indoors for extra hay, their breath and bodies adding to the warmth, though also to the smell. But no matter how many layers you wear, or how close you sit to the fire, the cold creeps in. It stiffens your fingers, numbs your toes, and makes every chore harder. In such moments, you are reminded that survival here is not just about food, it is about enduring the bite of the wind, the damp of the ground, and the endless struggle to keep the warmth in and the cold out. Work from dawn to dusk. The rhythm of your life is set by the sun, and there is no such thing as a day off. When the first light bleeds into the horizon, you are already awake, stirring the embers of the fire, pulling on stiff, cold clothing, and preparing for a day that will end only when darkness makes work impossible. If you are a man, your place is most often in the fields. You walk there on bare or half-worn feet, a wooden-handled tool over your shoulder, plow, hoe, scythe, or sickle depending on the season. The soil may be frozen hard, or it may be heavy with mud, but the work must be done. You dig, sow, weed, and reap hour after hour, with your back bent and sweat soaking your tunic. If you are a woman, your work is no lighter. In the early morning, you bake bread from coarse ground grain, milk the goat or cow, feed the animals, and fetch water from the well or stream. You may spend hours spinning wool into thread or mending worn clothing, your fingers raw from the rough-fabers. In planting or harvest seasons, you join the men in the fields, your hands blistering from tools that have been used for generations. Children work alongside you as soon as they are old enough to walk steadily. They scare birds from the crops, gather kindling, or help grind grain at the mill. There is no concept of childhood as a time for play. Every hand is needed to keep the household alive. The work is repetitive but demanding. Your body itches from the constant lifting, bending, and carrying. Loses form thick on your hands. Your shoulders not from carrying buckets of water or bundles of firewood. At the end of the day, your feet are caked in mud, your fingernails black with soil, and your muscles sore in places you didn't know you had. The seasons decide the kind of labor you do. In spring, you plant and mend fences. In summer, you weed and guard the crops from pests. In autumn, you harvest in a rush against the weather. In winter, you mend tools, spin cloth, and care for livestock, while also cutting and hauling the wood you'll burn to stay alive. There are no weekends, no holidays in the way you might think of them today. Church feast days bring a pause in heavy work, but even then, the animals must still be fed, the fire tended, and the bread made. When sickness strikes or injury slows you, the work does not wait. Fields left untended will not forgive you. Animals without care will sicken and die. The land demands your labor every day of your life, until you are too weak to give either until it takes you entirely. In the Middle Ages, work is not a path to wealth. It is simply the price of survival. The burden of taxes, rents, and duties in the Middle Ages, you do not truly own your land, your crops, or even your time. Everything you work for is touched by the hand of someone above you, your lord, the church, and the crown. If you are a peasant bound to the manor, you owe rent to your lord. This is not always coin. In fact, coin is rare. More often, you pay in kind, a portion of your grain, a share of your livestock, or a set number of days working the Lord's own fields instead of your own. This labor rent can mean weeks of the best weather in spring or autumn spent sowing and harvesting for someone else, while your own fields wait. Then there are taxes. The king demands them, the Lord collects them, and sometimes the church imposes its own on top. The tithe of the church tenth is due from everything you produce. Even if your harvest is poor, you are still expected to give a tenth of your grain, your wool, your cheese. Refusing is unthinkable. The church not only holds spiritual power but can strip you of what little you have. On top of that, there are fees for things you might never imagine. You may have to pay to use the Lord's mill, the only place you are allowed to grind grain. Pay to use his oven, if you do not want to bake your bread in the ashes of your hearth. Pay to pasture your animals on his land, or to collect firewood in his forest. Even the right to marry may come with a fee. If you are late with payments, the penalties are steep: extra work, seizure of goods, or even the loss of your plot of land. In bad years, when harvests are meager, meeting these obligations can mean giving away the grain you need to feed your family. Hunger in the village is often matched by plenty in the Lord's hall. The duties do not stop with rent and taxes. You are also bound to serve in corps of labor, repairing roads, digging ditches, building fences whenever the Lord commands. In times of war, you might be called to carry supplies, repair fortifications, or even fight, armed with little more than a pitchfork. The burden is constant, like a weight on your back that never lifts. You may work harder than you thought possible, but still find yourself with almost nothing left after the demands are met. For the poor in the Middle Ages, survival is not just about weathering storms or working the land. It is about enduring the unending pull of those above you, who see your labor as their right, and your life as part of their property. Illness, injury, and the lack of medical care in the Middle Ages. Illness is not a rare misfortune, it is a constant shadow over your life. A simple cough can linger for weeks. A small cut can turn red, swell, and kill you. Without modern medicine, every sickness and injury carries risk. Your body is your only tool for survival, but it is always under strain. The work is heavy, the food often lacking in nourishment, and your home is damp, smoky, and crowded. This makes you an easy target for disease. Colds and fevers spread quickly, and when one person falls ill in a small hut, it is only a matter of time before the whole family is coughing and shivering. Common ailments like dysentery, caused by dirty water, can drain your strength until you can no longer work. Toothaches can become infected abscesses, swelling your face and leaving you in agony. There are no antibiotics, only herbal remedies, prayers, and whatever skill the local healer might have learned from tradition or luck. If you suffer an injury, it can be just as dangerous as disease. A sprained ankle in the planting season could mean your field goes untended. Deep cut from a sickle or an axe may never heal properly, leaving you with a useless limb. Infections are feared, for they can turn a living, working body into a corpse in days. For more serious conditions, people sometimes turn to the village wise woman or cunning man, who uses herbs, charms, and sometimes bloodletting to balance the humors. The church may offer blessings, relics, or pilgrimages to holy sites in hopes of divine healing. But if the illness is severe, most people simply endure or they die. Epidemics are the worst of all. A bad year might bring an outbreak of ergot poisoning from moldy rye, killing many in the village. And though the great plagues are rare in any given lifetime, they leave a deep scar in memory. You know that when disease comes in force, there is nothing you can do except pray and wait for it to pass or take you with it. Illness and injury in the Middle Ages are not just personal hardships, they threaten your family's survival. If you cannot work, the harvest suffers. If you die, your spouse and children may lose the land entirely. In this world, health is fragile, and there is no safety net, only the thin hope that you will wake each morning with enough strength to face the day. The harsh justice and brutal punishments in the Middle Ages, the law is not designed to protect you, it is designed to keep order for those in power. Justice is swift, often public, and rarely merciful, especially if you are poor. For minor offenses, stealing a loaf of bread, gathering firewood from the Lord's forest without permission, you might face public humiliation. The stocks or pillory will hold you for hours, or even days, while neighbors and strangers throw insults, rotten food, or worse. The pain is not just physical, it is the shame of being displayed as an example to others. More serious crimes bring harsher penalties. Theft of livestock, poaching deer from the Lord's lands, or striking someone of higher status can result in whipping until your back is raw. In some cases, your hand might be cut off as a permanent reminder of your crime. For crimes seen as a threat to the social order, rebellion, murder, here's how the punishment can be death. Hanging is common, and executions are held in public to remind everyone of their place. If the crime is considered especially grave, the method might be more brutal: burning at the stake, beheading, or being drawn and quartered. The law is not equal. If a wealthy man commits a crime, he might pay a fine. If a poor man commits the same act, he might lose his life. Disputes are often decided not by truth, but by trial, by ordeal: plunging your hand into boiling water to prove innocence, or walking across hot iron. Survive without injury, and you are judged innocent; suffer burns or wounds, and you are guilty. Church courts handle matters of morality and faith, but they too can be harsh. Adultery, blasphemy, or failing to attend Mass could mean public penance, flogging, or fines you cannot afford. The Church might also impose excommunication, cutting you off from the community entirely, a spiritual and social death. Justice in the Middle Ages is less about fairness and more about control. The punishments are not meant to rehabilitate, but to frighten. And for the poor, one mistake or one false accusation can end everything. Faith, fear, and the power of the Church in the Middle Ages. Faith is not simply a personal belief, it is the air you breathe, the thread that ties every moment of life from birth to death. The Church is everywhere, in your village, in your laws, in your celebrations, and in your fears. The day you are baptized, you are part of the Church's flock. Its teachings tell you how to live, what is right and wrong, and what fate awaits you after death. Salvation is promised to the faithful, but hellfire is promised to sinners, and the descriptions of eternal torment are vivid enough to keep most people in line. You attend Mass each week, standing in the cold stone nave as the priest chants in Latin, a language you cannot understand but which you believe carries divine power. The scent of incense drifts through the air, the light of candles flickers against carved saints, and the painted walls and stained glass tell the baubles stories in colors brighter than anything in daily life. The Church marks your year with holy days and feast days. Christmas, Easter, and Saints' Days are the moments of joy and festivity, a break from the endless labor. Yet even these times come with rules: fasts before feasts, confessions before celebrations, and almsgiving to the poor even if you are poor yourself. Priests and monks are your link to the divine, but also your judges in matters of the soul. The parish priest hears your sins, tells you your penance, and reminds you that confession is not just a duty, but a necessity for salvation. The Church teaches that disobedience to its laws risks not just earthly punishment but eternal damnation. Fear of God shapes your every choice. Misfortune, crop failure, illness, storm can be seen as divine punishment. Miracles and relics are believed to hold healing powers, and pilgrimages to holy sites may be undertaken in desperate hope. Yet, the Church also provides comfort. It offers burial in consecrated ground, prayers for the dead, and a promise that your suffering in this life can earn reward in the next. In a harsh, uncertain world, this hope is as vital as bread. But the Church's power is not only spiritual, it is material. It owns land, collects tithes, and wields influence over kings and lords. To live in the Middle Ages is to live under the cross and the shadow it casts, every day of your life. Death, burial, and the hope for heaven in the Middle Ages. Death is never far. You see it in the fields, when a neighbor collapses from sickness. You see it in your own home, when a child does not wake from a fever. You see it in the village cemetery, where wooden crosses mark the resting places of those taken too soon. Life expectancy is short, and death often comes without warning. A bad harvest, a sudden illness, an infected wound, and he can take you before your time. You live with the knowledge that each day could be your last, and this makes the rituals around death deeply important. When someone dies, the body is washed, wrapped in a simple shroud, and placed in the center of the home so neighbors can pay their respects. The priest comes to bless the body, sprinkling holy water and saying prayers to guide the soul toward heaven. The scent of candles and incense fills the room, mingling with the quiet murmur of psalms. Burial must happen quickly. The body is carried to the churchyard, where a grave is dug by hand. There is no grand coffin, just the earth to receive you. The priest intones the rites, and handfuls of soil fall on the shroud. In the distance, the church bell tolls slowly, each strike a reminder to the living that their own time will come. For the poor, the grave is marked only by a wooden cross, which will rot away in a few years. Yet, you believe that the soul's journey matters more than any stone. Prayers are said for the dead in the weeks after burial, for it is taught that these can shorten the soul's time in purgatory. Death is feared, but it is also accepted as a passage into another life. The Church promises that if you have been faithful, confessed your sins, obeyed God's laws, you will see paradise, a place without hunger, pain, or fear. And so you live each day with one eye on the next world. Every act of charity, every prayer, every act of obedience is an investment in your eternal fate. In this way, death is not just an end, but the final threshold that every medieval soul must cross, carrying only the weight of their deeds.